My partner here grew up in socialist Poland and has a lot of experiences running business in Poland under socialism and when it moved practically overnight to a free market economy. Originally, when we first opened the company, we were working on an Israeli subject. So naturally, we wanted to open that company in Israel. And we did that. We started that. And every step of the process was very difficult, very arduous, very expensive. Hiring lawyers every step of the way, whether it was opening a bank account, incorporating a company, getting permission to open a company that had foreign investors, really, really not easy. After that experience, Daniel started saying, hey, let's give it a try in Poland. And we did, and it was a breeze compared to what it was in Israel, very easy. We opened the company, everything worked as it should. What we wanted, what we expected was what happened. We wanted to open a company, we opened it. Obviously, nothing's free, so we had to pay for notaries, we had to pay for lawyers, but nothing was, let's say, crazy. So we ended up incorporating our company in Poland. There's also there's a big pool of talent in Poland, as there also is in Israel. So we lucked out that way. And we started developing the Sagger simulator in Poland. At the same time, we continued running a small operation in Israel. And this kind of really allowed us to compare and contrast the two different, running business in the two different countries. So just to give you guys a few examples, we wanted to open a bank account in Israel. And as a foreign company, we had to hire a lawyer. We appeared at the bank in person a few times. We were asked to provide things like our business plan. We were looked at with heavy suspicion because we had foreign owners. They kept asking for more things, and it became like a joke. We were never going to get this open. It took us, after we got serious with the lawyer, Daniel, about 6 months, right?
Easily 6 months, or I would say even longer, because we had to switch banks. So with the first bank, we tried for about 4 or 5 months, and then we moved to the second bank, and that was another over 3 months. Yeah. Plus additional help. We hired another person to help us with this, besides the lawyers.
Yeah, we had to have a person that we hired full time to just work on this, that kind of managed the lawyers. We hired 2 lawyers. It came to well over 20,000 shekels, this whole operation, just to open a bank account. We had before that, we were at another bank. It was always problematic. We finally ended up getting permission. There's no reason why we shouldn't have gotten permission. Everything was normal. We were just not from Israel. Mother company, not from Israel. There was nothing unusual here, no unusual activity. We were doing regular transfers, not large transfers. Everything was normal stuff, like paying employees, paying taxes, nothing unusual. Yet it seemed we were always looked at with suspicion. I was having to make frequent trips down to the tax authorities due to the small operation that we had in the Israeli company. And there's this phrase in Israel called shitata matzliach. It means literally the successful way, meaning that places like income tax in Israel will just charge everyone in Israel, say like 5,000 shekels, every business owner, because they make up some reason, and they just hope that some people won't come in and fight them and get rid of that. So that's a known phenomenon in Israel, and I encountered that a lot running business here. Every single year, they were asking me to come down and erase this 10,000 shekel deposit that I supposedly had to make because they call it in Israel mikdamot. It's taxes on your expected earnings. But it was funny because I made it really clear that we were in development. We're in development for 7 years. We didn't have any earnings. We didn't have any expected earnings yet. We always had this 10,000 shekel mikdamot every single year that I had to go down and get settled. So to contrast that, in Poland, we went in, for example, to open the bank account, and it was a breeze. We walked in before the company actually had before it was fully incorporated. We had our
submittals only
in Hebrew, yeah, and we had our basic first number, our submittal papers, and they opened the bank account for us that day and told us just send in everything else when it's ready. So we gave them right away the stuff that we'd signed at the notary, proof that the company was going to be open momentarily. And that was it. And everything, as always, every time we have issues with the bank there, we call our banker, very responsive, very friendly, very helpful. Of course, it's banks these days are not always like very easy to work with, but generally it was as could be expected. Nothing was unusual.
If I could just interject, a simple comparison here was opening sub-accounts. Once you have a bank account, when you run a business, you want to have a sub-account to manage certain aspects of your company or different currencies. We needed in Poland to set up 4 sub-accounts in yen, Japanese yen, in British pounds, euro, and some other one, and like marketing sub-account. And I remember going to the bank, PKO, where our account is, and it took me, I don't know, 15 minutes, maybe 20, to set it all up. And the guy was very courteous, very helpful, and he just set it up, done. Similar thing we wanted to do with our bank in Tel Aviv. And I drove there. They told me you have to come in person. Fine. And I remember talking to the official, and after a while she said, listen, this is kind of complicated. She called the branch manager. He came over, we started talking. And after maybe like half an hour, he says, listen, Daniel, this is complex thing. You want a sub-account. It will take as much effort as opening the original account, which was over 6 months. You will have to hire a lawyer for this. And it may take you another 6 months to do it. So if you can live without this sub-account, I strongly advocate that you don't open a sub-account. So there's 2 identical situations and 2 completely different treatments from both sides. In Israel, it was a mission impossible. In Poland, it was a 15, 20-minute task. I would like to point out also another identical situation. We sent some box with 12 toys. We had little plastic gun toy. I mean, not gun, but tank toy. And those we use for our marketing purposes. And we sent 1 box. We made them in China, manufactured them in China. And from China, we sent 1 box via FedEx to Poland and another box of 12 toys to Israel. In Poland, it arrived after maybe 6, 7 days, and a courier brought it over to our office. Done. Cost maybe, I don't know, $100. I don't remember exact price. In Israel, we got notified after a week that a toy box arrived. And then we had to fill out some forms, fine. And then there was more forms. And then turned out that we had to hire a lawyer because there was some concerns if those toys are safe for the public. And then more and more and more things. And then they brought incredibly that this might be some money laundering scheme and that we want to bring those toys to launder money from China. So we had to
toy tanks.
The toy tanks.
Small toy tanks, so nothing of.
And they were worth maybe 400 shekels, maybe 500 shekels. We spent thousands of shekels trying to set it up. And then they asked us to file a statement signed by the president of the company that those toy tanks will not be sold in Israel to prevent any possible money laundering. And I remember you, Hannah, got very frustrated and you said, listen, what about just throwing those tanks in the garbage, throw them in the sea, forget it, we don't need it, it's 400 shekels. We spent already like over 5,000 clearing them. Well, the reply was that to dispose of them like this, we need to file a petition. And this will be a process, which is also costly. So it was like no way out. We felt really trapped.
Yeah, it was several months. We eventually got them cleared, like Daniel said, thousands of shekels down the tube for these little tanks that we just wanted to use as models to show some of the people we were working with, some of the schools we were looking to sell through. So there's absolutely no reasonable reason to hold them up at customs, but they were, and it took us several months and a lot of money to get them cleared. So I just want to make one thing clear. We're not doing this to like bash Israel or anything. We would like to see Israel get rid of some of these major issues in their economy, all this regulation. I think that this is really valuable. I know a lot of Israelis are frustrated with the situation, with all the regulations. And it's good to compare and contrast and hear how Poland, who was actually once socialist and had these types of regulations, managed to shake free from them. And maybe Daniel can talk more about that because he has experience running businesses in socialist Poland, and he saw the change, which happened practically overnight in the 90s, over to a free market economy.
Yeah, I run a software business in Poland in the 80s, a long time ago. And it was a nightmare, time and a half. It was really difficult. Anything required permits, regulations, certifications, all sorts of applications. I remember that at one point we needed to hire five more programmers. And back then you needed a government permit to hire additional employees. You had to specify what they do, how much they will be paid, the whole gamut of information. And we went through all the permitting process, which took a lot of time. And finally, we got a permit to hire 5 extra programmers to develop our software. But there was one caveat with that permit, that the programmers have to be at least 60 years of age or older. Why? Because Polish government, in their infinite wisdom, understood that there's problem with employment for older people, so they wanted to find workplaces for older people. Obviously, it was ridiculous. There was no 60-year-old programmers in Poland in the 80s, and generally 60-year-old people don't get into programming. So it was just total nonsense. But
Especially
really,
back then, when 60-year-olds back then were
yeah,
in
when
their
they were growing up
years
young,
and
there was no
years.
computers. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's
car
kind of,
was a new invention in Poland
I
at
like
that
that
time.
example because that's just a key example of the government trying to with a real problem. There's people that are around 60 that have no work, trying to fix it by more regulations and creating more problems. Because then you had the problem of, I just don't have programmers because there's no programmers over 60.
But to illustrate how crazy command economy, the highly regulated economy can go, to what absurdity. This is probably one of the most absurd examples that I remember from socialist Poland of those days. Divers in the Baltic Sea at the Polish shore were exploring the seashore, and they came upon a huge mound underwater mounds of pencils. It's like it was like a geological formation that consisted of pencils. So they brought some pencils to the surface and started investigating what the hell is going on. Turned out that there was a pencil factory very close by the shore on the Baltic Sea in Poland. And that pencil factory was manufacturing pencils. But they figured out that it's much cheaper to make a pencil without the lead inside of the pencil, the lead used for writing. Obviously, if you don't put the lead in it, pencil is useless, but it's cheaper to make. So they switched all their production capacity, or most of it, into leadless pencils. But then you have to do something with the pencils. They had government mandated guidelines that they had to manufacture, I don't know, like 10 million pencils a year. Since this was a command economy, totally socialist, there was no free market, they didn't really have to worry about selling those pencils. So they were, after producing it and counting it and reporting to the government that pencils were made, they had to dispose of them, and they were dumping them in the sea nearby. And that went on for years, and nobody figured out that this insane craziness was going on. So that's what command economy leads to, a complete insanity. And that's an example from my childhood. I'm not childhood, from when I was running a company already at that time.
That's funny, kind of sad, but also funny.
Very
So
sad.
thanks for sharing that with us. And we'll see you guys next time. We have a lot more stories and a lot more things to share with you about our experience, but I hope this shed some light on our business decision to run the company mainly in Poland rather than in Israel. And we look forward to exploring some more of these issues and just talking about it with you guys again next week. So don't forget to like, comment with anything you want to hear about next week, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye.